Well, this Sunday here in South Carolina, as we get you connected to the Capitol, the fallout continues from the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The rhetoric on social media and on college campuses costing some people their jobs in the state of South Carolina in the last week or so. Two major universities here in South Carolina taking action against employees about some things that were said in the wake of that tragedy just last week involving the political commentator Charlie Kirk. That's where we begin this Sunday morning. As usual, we welcome in Catherine Glenn Foster and Dave Wilson. So where we begin is Coastal Carolina firing an employee, at least one employee. Clemson firing some employees as well. We talked about this last week because there was just the rumblings swirling about, and A.G. Wilson and many other state leaders had some problems with this. They threatened defunding some of these schools. Well, now action's been taken. Could be more, but by the time the next week rolls around. But we're walking a line on free speech now, and there's some heavy discussion about where it ends and where it begins now in this country and in this state.
That's true. And I have to say I'm very excited about this week because it is so legal heavy.
This is your expertise, right?
Yes.
Constitutional law.
Yes, so I'm really excited about this conversation that we're having. So it really goes back to the First Amendment, to the entire point of our Bill of Rights. The First Amendment is there to bind the government from restricting our rights. First Amendment goes to federal, together with the 14th. It also applies to state governments, and that includes public schools and colleges. And the First Amendment says that the government Congress cannot make a law abridging freedom of speech, that we can think what we want, say what we want. And that's pretty much true across the board. Limited exceptions, things like inciting violence. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't call specifically for violence, things like that. But overall, we have this right to say what we believe. And it is there specifically for tough times like this. It's not there for when everyone agrees, because if we all agree, there's no point in, we don't need that protection. It's there for the tough times. It's there for those times when we may not agree with each other. It's there to make sure that even an offensive point of view can be spoken. People have a right to offensive views. We see it every single day on the internet. Like, don't read the comments.
You don't want to read them.
It's
a waste of time.
Exactly. And so we know that people are out there saying reprehensible things that we want to work with them, try to get upstream of the problem and try to get there before they develop these views, these really abhorrent views often. But they're still allowed to have them, and they're allowed to express them so that it doesn't just get pushed underground, gain legs, gain traction, and create more of a movement heading towards anarchy.
This is a real concern from a journalistic standpoint. You know, we have the freedom of speech, freedom of the press. You have an ability, as Catherine just said, to say what you want to be able to say, but at the same time, there are big concerns that come up from folks who are in areas of leadership saying, wait a minute, I'm hearing a lot of pushback. Prime example happened at a school district up in Spartanburg County. A teacher's aide who had been the employee of the year in 2015 had
more recently than that.
More recently, 5 years ago. 5 years ago, she loses her job over a quote of Charlie Kirk's that she put on the air, or not on the air, on her Facebook page, and then later in the comments is talking about, after saying thoughts and prayers, going in and explaining some things. And it's so unruly sometimes, it seems, but when you're thinking about what people say, how they say it, how it's being said to you, or about something that's important to you, emotions will rise. Is it right to turn around and celebrate the death of somebody, especially somebody who was so gruesomely murdered? No. I mean, as a society, we sit there and we frown on those things. And so we have this tendency, though, to think I can sit behind my screen and I can say and do anything that I want, and it's not going to have consequences. So do we have the right to free speech? We have the right to free speech, but guess what? You also take on the responsibility of the consequences of that speech, and that's one of the things that happened in Spartanburg County, and it's unfortunate, especially with what this teacher's aide said.
And they're now suing.
Right.
They're now
Right.
suing.
Yeah, so I want to actually go ahead and jump
Yeah.
into that for a second, and,
Yeah.
and then we'll take a step back and actually look at how this applies to a public employee versus a private employee, because we can all agree that we should have the right to criticize a political figure. I think that's part of the nature of our republic.
Right.
That's kind of part of the nature of our show, right?
It absolutely is.
Time to time.
Yeah, but whether we're talking about Trump or Kirk or Vance or Mike Johnson, or we're talking about Biden or Obama, we're allowed to say something negative. We're allowed to post a critique. And just because you're a public employee does not mean that you're not a citizen. Your free speech rights don't end. It's a little bit more limited. You can't say something that's going to disrupt the classroom, for example. It needs to be about something public, of the public interest. It can't be maybe something about a specific student. That's a bridge too far. But if you're saying something about something political or public, you're doing it on your own time, privately, speaking in your private voice, not as an official employee, then that is permissible. So let's go to this. Let's go to this teacher, because I think that's really interesting. Some of the limitations here: fighting words, anything that's likely to incite violence, but that does not include even celebrating death, even though we may view that as reprehensible. I think we all do. Yeah. But you are allowed to have even reprehensible opinions. Again, let's go down to what this teacher posted, this teacher's aide. She used a direct quote from Charlie Kirk on guns, on gun control, and said thoughts and prayers, and then added in, the whole point here is that anytime someone is killed, it's a tragedy. Anytime. Even someone I may not like, someone I disagree with, but instead of accepting it, why don't we do something about it? She said, I disagree with Kirk and think today should not have happened. I'm sorry it did. She felt heartbreak for anyone and everyone affected by gun violence and hoped that one day enough will be enough. And this to me is the key. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing: for everyone to be safe in their school, home, church, in a public place, at a rally or event, or just out in public. She's taking this moment, this national moment, and saying, let's be a better nation.
Yes, that's what it looks like to me when you read off those words.
So she quotes Kirk's quote. And Kirk's quote, just so that you're familiar with it, it says, I think it's worth it to have, talking about the Second Amendment and guns, I think it's worth it to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. That's what she quoted from Kirk, and then said thoughts and prayers, and then later on the comments that Catherine just made. This is the thing that created an uproar in this Spartanburg school district. You're getting phone calls, the school's getting phone calls, the school district is getting phone calls, and the concern that you have in this is that she is expressing the desire that this not be happening. She doesn't have to agree with Charlie Kirk. You don't have to agree. And she didn't call for his death. She didn't celebrate his death. As a matter of fact, she went on the far extreme of that.
And I just want to add also, actually, this was done on her private time, free time, on her private Facebook, set to friends only, and it was very limited. And while the school district has said that there have been calls from parents and so on, they haven't said how many. They haven't provided any evidence of this.
So this goes to a point that now the superintendent of education, Ellen Weaver, has stepped into this particular
a memo
issue
that went out to school superintendents around the state. And Dylan, we have a full screen graphic from Ellen Weaver here. That's just a snippet of it that went out.
It's a longer
it's a piece of a multi-paragraph.
It's a page and a half long memo, right? And she says in the second paragraph of it, anyone who celebrates or condones murder or political violence should be disqualified from teaching or working with children. She goes a little bit later, teachers carry a weighty responsibility to convey both knowledge and character to their students. A few who fail to uphold reasonable expectations of professional conduct, dishonor the service of their peers, and breach the trust our parents and communities place in our schools. Yeah. Okay, so in this case, we've got a teacher's aide, doesn't have the same level of protections as a teacher does because of the classification between a teacher and a teacher's aide. But on top of it, I don't see anywhere where, according to the memo from Superintendent Ellen Weaver, I didn't see any condoning of murder or political violence. So why is she being disqualified then simply because she posted something? Is it simply because she disagreed with Kirk? What's the reasoning behind that?
The courts are going to decide this one, that lawsuit.
This could be the first lawsuit of this kind in America right now.
It is.
And so when we think about that, you begin to recognize South Carolina, yet again, leading the way
on the
legal side. How far will this go up? It really depends. I don't know. Does this go all the way to the Supreme Court?
It certainly could. Yeah, it definitely could, especially because the courts are very protective of free speech across the board. You know, our colleges, our universities, they are supposed to be the marketplace of ideas. They're supposed to be academic freedom, where you bring in ideas, and we've seen some of the ideas that colleges and universities have brought in, especially if you subscribe to some of these newsletters that are warning you about what some of your kids may be exposed to if you send them off to some of these colleges and universities. And so we know that they defend that because they are this bastion of free speech. There's a little bit more protection at the lower level. We want to protect our kids, of course. But nonetheless, the state employees working for a public school, a public college, university, they are still citizens. They still have protections. And we don't have a case here where there's any inciting of violence. In fact, this is someone who, it sounds like, wants gun control, wants some of these guns off the streets, greater protections at least, so that we don't have yet another assassination, yet another school shooting. It's time to end the violence, and here she is getting fired for that.
Yep. We're going to continue the conversation here with what Attorney General Alan Wilson is doing here, and several others attorneys general in this country on this topic of free speech on campus.
Yes.
That's when we come back here on Connect to the Capitol. Welcome back to Connect to the Capitol. We continue our conversation about free speech in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. A.G. Alan Wilson on Friday joining 16 attorneys general in this country, issuing a letter to universities, not only in South Carolina, but around the country, saying protect free speech on our college campuses, but also couching that with saying, well, it's all about safety and security as well, so we can't be inciting violence. It's a multi-layered approach here to what Wilson's letter says, and he had conversations with USC leadership, the president, Michael Amoritis, saying, hey, nothing's changing at USC. There were rumblings that it was going to, that there weren't going to be any forums anymore. Apparently that's not the case, but this could be a wait and see. But this is a tough one for Alan Wilson as an AG and now candidate for governor.
Exactly. He's trying to balance law and politics here, both representing the state and ensuring that he's standing by the school districts and the colleges and universities, but also recognizing that there is a higher calling. As a public official, he has to follow the Constitution. And so really it is about, for him, calling for free speech, ensuring that we do continue these public fora, that we're able to continue this marketplace of ideas that colleges and universities are built to be and have been for millennia, but at the same time taking a step back and saying, okay, well, we are at this moment going to take a little bit of a closer look at some of this specific speech, these instances, and make sure that that our kids are protected, even when our kids are technically adults.
Yeah.
That's where it happens with Clemson. Clemson let go of two.
Yes, two.
And perhaps a staff member. Coastal Carolina, same thing. So the Attorney General comes out and basically says, you're not going to be criminally charged, Clemson University, Coastal Carolina, and as a matter of fact, he goes, any college or any higher education facility, you're not going to be criminally charged in South Carolina for taking an action against an employee. So here's where it breaks down. School districts, there are state laws, there are state requirements, but there are also district policy handbooks. If you haven't pulled out your handbook, you may want to do that and see what your rules are on social media. This is a new ground that many courts have even taken up the issue of the freedom of speech and social media, because it's a platform that is new, it's different. We've been experiencing probably, a good portion of your life you've been using it. But the thing is, the courts have not necessarily addressed it from a free speech standpoint. And this is a question that then comes up. If there's a policy in your school district that says you can't post certain things on social media, you got to follow the policy of the school district that you work for.
Or be aware that you're challenging it. Because
Right.
once
And that there could be a consequence.
Exactly.
Right.
Once you've provided notice, then...
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is a place where I read the comments from the person at Clemson. They were detestable. I don't know how anybody can go and celebrate the assassination, the political assassination of a person. I don't know how you turn around and celebrate somebody's death. At the same time, at what point, and Catherine, this is a question for you, at what point does it cross that line? You can have an emotional response to something. You can say things. You can be happy about something. But at what point does it cross that line?
Right. And so again, this all goes back to the public school, private school distinction. If these were private schools, private colleges, we would not be having this conversation here today. It's more at will. They can do what they want. But when we're talking about a public institution, it really does go back, with some exceptions and things like that. It goes back to, are you inciting violence? Are you disrupting the classroom, the learning environment for students in a way that crosses that line? And so in some of these cases, at least, we're likely to see kind of a wave of lawsuits, First Amendment lawsuits, defending people's First Amendment rights based on Section 1983, which we talked about a couple months ago in another context. But we're going to see these lawsuits. We're going to likely see the courts working to look at these balancing tests, how to defend free speech, and for me, it just goes back to, in the end, Charlie Kirk himself. As we remember the man, what did he stand for? And what he stood for was free speech. He set out a microphone. He welcomed all comers. He welcomed the people who disagreed with him, and he wanted to win with words, not with stifling words. And so, in the wake of his assassination, I worry that what he stood for is fading away.
This is the discussion I know we're going to have in the future. One show is certainly not enough, and we do know that probably there will be more things to talk about as this comes up. We come back, though, on Connect to the Capitol. We're talking about voting, how you do it, and how those lines are drawn. They're going to stay the same. That's when we come back. Welcome back to Connect to the Capitol. An opinion coming out of the South Carolina Supreme Court on gerrymandering and how our voting districts are drawn up. They say, no problem. The political gerrymandering of our voting districts is perfectly legal. I know it got a lot of challenges from League of Women Voters,
the
ACLU.
A lot of places came in there and said, listen,
we don't like it.
We don't like the way this goes. If you don't like it, then vote differently in the next election. The lines in South Carolina were drawn in 2022. If you want to understand, we're in 2025 now. The people that you showed up to a vote for in 2020 were the ones who decided what the new lines look like. If you don't like the lines, vote different people in. And we have a supermajority of Republicans in both chambers, and they have now turned around and said, okay, well, we can draw these lines politically however we want to. And so they start giving themselves a greater level of control and power based upon that. Again, if you don't like the way it's going, do more than complain here to your television real quick and get out to vote, because voter turnout is pitiful when it comes to elections in South Carolina.
Unless it's a presidential election or a gubernatorial race, no one's showing up for county council, city council, no one's showing up.
Right, and so these lines are drawn during the session after the census takes place. So the next time they're probably going to be redrawn, unless, which we've said we're not going to redraw them like Texas and California, the next time they're going to be redrawn are going to be the people that you vote for 5 years from now. So keep that part in mind.
Also on the topic of voting that we have to get to, the ousting of the State Election Commission's Executive Director, Howard Knapp. They met this week, Wednesday, I believe, voted he's out, said it was time for a change. That's Howard right there. Been on the job about 3 years, full-time.
Right.
And questions are swirling about why now? What is going on here?
Yeah, and in the wake of what we've seen about this voter data
That the White House wants.
Yes, exactly.
So they said that it's not necessarily about that, but SLED has shown up. SLED is doing an investigation. There is the claim that there has been some level of misconduct. We don't know what that is because both the Election Commission, the board of it, as well as Mr. Knapp have not said anything at all publicly about this, except for the fact that he did applaud the staff that he had. And so it's going to be an ongoing thing. We'll see what the SLED investigation happens, because right now they're tight-lipped on it as well.
Yeah, and SLED is not going to say anything until the end of the line.
That is,
investigation.
as we have said many times on
They
this
may
show.
at least just confirm it's happening. That's
Exactly.
about it. They're looking into something about something, and that's what we can tell you. All right, what we can tell you when we come back is there's a new player in the AG's race, one we've already mentioned. So, but at least they didn't say they had a special announcement.
Thank goodness.
And also,
I couldn't think of another sport that we could compare that
we
to.
couldn't. And a development on the R.J. May case as that trial inches closer. That's when we come back.
They are the people of South Carolina who deserve the next Attorney General to be a proven conservative prosecutor, a lifelong Republican conservative like I've been, and a proud supporter of our President Donald J. Trump and his America First agenda.
Republican candidate in South Carolina says they're a Trump guy. Or a Trump woman for the
Imagine
females.
that.
I'm
That's
shocked.
David Stumbo,
Really?
Yes.
out of Greenwood, solicitor there, is now running for AG as a Republican. There are now 3 official candidates in that race. So no surprises. But on any of this,
No.
including the message that being said.
That's true. Surprisingly, he said he was running out to be tough on crime.
I hope so.
That's what an
Right.
attorney general does.
I hope so. I hope they all are.
Yes, that's sort of the point.
They are. If we could take a quick look at the other candidates there for AG, we do have a graphic with them because we have Stephen Goldfinch, we have Stumbo, we have David Pascoe, and Henry McMaster Jr. Hasn't jumped in yet, but we had the other 3 right.
We're waiting.
We're
still
waiting
batting-
to, we're waiting
We're
to
still
see
batting
if
750 though.
Yeah.
Right. So when we look at this, you got a state senator, you got a couple prosecutors that are here, and the governor's son, who it's looking to possibly follow in his father's footsteps, because do remember Henry McMaster was
the
Attorney General of South
sure
Carolina
was.
as well.
So he's taking a couple of months to decide.
Well,
Right.
I think it's time to
Yes.
jump in if he's going to go.
Probably.
A legal matter that we're going to close on. We got about 90 seconds or less. The R.J. May case. The former state lawmaker facing those 10 federal child porn charges. He filed a brief this week asking for a change of venue for his trial, which is supposed to start in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Citing all the media coverage. Watch Fox News even named in this briefing, as well as pretty much every other media outlet in the state.
Right. If you can't win in court, you move the court. He is splashed over pretty much every media outlet, and it's not limited to South Carolina because
No, it's a national case.
he was engaging in these activities nationally and even internationally.
And so this is one of those, it's a natural thing for him to attempt to do, to make some sort of delay. Let me find a group of people who may not have heard what I've been accused of doing.
They've heard.
They've heard. And it goes back to long stories of South Carolina politics and people trying to change venues.
Yeah,
So-
I expect that one getting thrown back pretty quick.
Yeah.
Probably not long after this show airs, is what I'm thinking. So
That's what you get on a Sunday morning.
That's right. We are done on this Sunday morning. We had a lot to
Yes.
say and in a little bit of time to do it. So thanks for joining us. Dave, Catherine, as always appreciate your input. We will see you next Sunday here, and we get you connected to the Capitol.
Have a good
Have a good
weekend.
Sunday.